G'day everyone, welcome back to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. I hope you are all well. We are finally dry here in Queensland, Brisbane, Australia. We, as you know, we had a cyclone of sorts a couple of weeks back, and it has taken quite some time for everything to just dry. But we're finally back to an even keel. I got to clean up my lawns yesterday and you know, make the place look half respectable again, which was good. I hope you are doing well wherever you are. Of course, was it last week? I think we had Phil Henley from Wings of Pegasus on the show, and we were talking everything auto-tune and pitch correction, and it was I found it a really interesting topic and discussion, in part because I got to watch it along with you because I'd had to pre-record the interview, and so that was good to do. And I've had continuing conversations around the subject with many of my private students, and specifically, I had a really great conversation with Alyssa this morning, who really came at the subject from a very different angle, and it was good to hear her thoughts on it, and dare I say her disagreements with perhaps where Phil and I stand on the issue. But that's good. That makes all of our thoughts around these subjects all the more richer, and I think we should engage in it. I don't think we should run away from that. So perhaps you had different thoughts, and you can leave those in the live chat as we go along. I can see Linda and Laura and Mr. Fomiati in the live chat as we speak, and I can see Laura just making the point that yes, it was an interesting discussion. So that's good. We are going to be doing a live Q&A today. Do you know what, we haven't done the Q&A for a little while, and that is because now, as a part of the live show, we have a range of different formats, don't we? And I'm really pleased. Can I share with you? I'm really pleased with where we've evolved to, you know, in this live show presentation, in so much as, you know, we have our special guests. We're having another special guest next week. We had one last week. We have got our Q&A, which we're going to do today. We've got our mini topics, and we've got another one of those coming up. I'll share what that is in a second. And we also now have our live reaction / review / analysis videos, which Laura was our first cab off the rank, and that was awesome. We're definitely going to be doing those again. I think that was I certainly got your feedback that was a really positive educational process to go through, so we will be doing that again. And just so I don't forget, I do need to say happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. It was Linda who reminded me. Actually, Linda, I'd heard on the radio this morning coming home from the gym at like 6:30 this morning that it was St. Patrick's Day. And then I got your email, Linda, in regards to today's show, saying that it was St. Patrick's Day, but that you weren't going to go into the history of it. I'm not entirely informed around St. Pat's Day. I remember even, you know, right back into primary school, particularly when I went to a Catholic primary school, that St. Pat's Day was very much a celebrated day. But do you know what? For the life of me, I can't remember why. I'm sure there's a reason. Linda, you said you weren't going to go into the convoluted history of it. But there's your homework, everyone. Go and find out what St. Pat's Day is all about. We have got a special poll going on today. The question and a lot of these, I ask these questions out of, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it, too? Which part of singing feels most magical to you? You can either nominate hitting a high note effortlessly, nailing a tricky vocal run, blending perfectly in harmony, or singing with deep emotion. We've already had 6 votes. We will end the poll later on in the show. We'll have a look at what you all chose, and then I'll share the one that I would choose. I mean, ultimately, when I created the poll, they can all provide magical moments. I know that, but you have to choose one. That's the beauty of these polls. You've got to choose one. And I think when it comes down to it, I know which one I would choose. And I'll give you a hint. I've shared in previous shows that this particular part of singing I really personally enjoy. We'll look at that again later in the show. So if you haven't already voted, jump in, make your vote known, and yeah, that will be good. As I said, we're going to do a Q&A in a moment, but I just want to very quickly tell you about the next 2 shows. Let me tell you about the show that will be in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, we'll be doing a mini topic show, which is, as for those of you who are new to the live show, we do it's almost like a webinar. In fact, it's not almost, it is a webinar style presentation. And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be looking at vocal styling and improvisation. So kind of looking at how do we style ourselves for that, in a sense, unique delivery. We're not unfamiliar with styling our hair. I always wear my hair back in a ponytail. It is kind of a distinguishing feature of mine. That is a styling choice, isn't it? And so how do we do that? How do we make those kind of choices with our voices? And so we're going to talk through that in a couple of weeks. And can I also just take the opportunity in talking about the mini topics? You can, if you become a member of the channel, you will receive access to all of the historical mini topics, because what I do after I've done them and presented them in the live show, I then edit them down, get rid of all of my ums and ahs, well, not all of them, get rid of a lot of my ums and ahs, and put in some B-roll, some sort of video that kind of matches maybe the metaphor that we're using at the time, and make them a really concise learning video. There, I think we're up to, there's between 10 and 15 of those specific webinar videos that are available. And to get access to those, you become a member of the channel, and it really is for a very small sum every month. And it's one way you can support the channel, and it's another way you can learn. And so it's very much a reciprocal arrangement, isn't it? So please consider becoming a part of the community in that way, and I will be very thankful for you for doing that. Let's talk about next week's show. And the reason I want to just highlight it, in one sense, firstly, because it's a special guest. We love to highlight our special guests, and we have some amazing people come onto the channel. We really do. Next week's special guest is a guest that we've had previously. Her name is Claudia Friedlander. She is best known for her work with singers, having previously been, so she's a singer herself, but having previously been also a certified personal trainer, someone who works with people in a gym. And I've shared with you before that I've got a personal trainer, and it's really great to have that person alongside you and to guide you. And that is not why we're having Claudia come on the show next week. Because we had Claudia on the show probably around about three. I must admit I didn't look. It was quite a number of years ago. I think it's about 3. And since then, about 18 months ago, Claudia was diagnosed with colon cancer, and subsequently has had to have surgeries and travel the journey of chemotherapy towards her recovery. As you know, I think I have walked that similar journey with my wife, Jody. We're coming up on 8 years ago. Jody was diagnosed with colon cancer, and she had to have surgery, and we had to travel the journey of really heavy duty chemotherapy. It's a really hard, challenging chapter. And I had waited, for a period of time with Claudia to then invite her onto the show to see if she wanted to come on to the show and share with us, firstly, her story, but secondly, also the impact that it has had on her identity as a singer, and what has she noticed about the impact of, for example, chemotherapy on her voice and her vocal expression, even her desire to express. These are questions that we'll ask next week, and she has so generously said she would like to come onto the show and talk about these things with us. I dare say this will be a very dare I say, an emotionally filled show. It's a very sensitive topic. We are going to treat it, appropriately. But I want you to know that, and I wouldn't have known this prior to going, walking the journey with my wife. But I want you to know that that's what we're going to be talking about, because for some, cancer, by virtue of their own experiences, either directly or indirectly, can be triggering, and it can be a challenging topic for some people. And so if you know that's you, then I want you to make a decision around whether next week's show is one that you want to engage with or not. And my full respect to either decision, and of course, the show will remain up on YouTube, forever and a day. So it's not as if, in the future you decide you might like to watch it. You certainly can, but in the meantime, just be aware that's going to be the topic, and I want that to be a safe experience for everyone. And I'm just so grateful to Claudia for saying she wants to come on and share her story, because I think for those of us who do watch, what I think it will give us some insight into is more not so much the discussion of cancer, because everyone's, and we're definitely not going to be giving any medical advice, because cancer, even within the construct of colon cancer, there are multiple different cancers. And so one person's experience of colon cancer is different to another's because the molecular makeup of that cancer is different. There are groupings. And so the point is we're not going to be, even coming close to suggesting that, this is a universal experience. Of course it can't be. But I think more so we're going to land in the where I want us to land is in the impact on her identity as a singer, and what impact that has had. And I think therein lies the value for us watching. There are so many different experiences in life, and cancer is only one of them. where our sense of identity as people who sing can be affected, can be impacted, and so I'm hoping that that our conversation with Claudia can shed some light on that. I really do think it can. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. The week after that, as I said, we'll be doing a mini topic. The week after that will be the studio break here. So we'll be taking a short 1 week break, and then we'll be back. But I'll let you know all about that. Oh, I just saw Kelly. Kelly's in the house. Nice to see you, Kelly. And I hope you are well, despite the fact that you have just claimed you are joining late. That's completely fine, Kelly. You aren't so late as to have missed the show. So there you go. And hello to everyone who do watch these shows as a replay, like, you know, after the fact. Love having you hang out with us. I know you're not in the live chat, but I love the fact that you're there, and that's actually the majority of you. It has to be said. We've got 9 votes for the live poll. That is the one thing that we get to do, you know, in the live chat that we can't do in you know, watching the show after the fact. You get to participate in the live vote with the live poll. We've got 9 votes so far. There is a clear winner. There is currently there is 10 votes. There is a clear winner so far. And a really a very definite clear loser as well. All will be revealed a little bit later. Hey, have you got any questions? We are going to get into our Q&A now, and we will get into it right after this. Okay, currently, everyone, we do not have any live questions. Oh, hang on. Oh no, Linda's putting one in. That's good, because otherwise we were going to be a bit stuck. But we do have a question from a couple of weeks ago, and this is Muhammad Aslam asked, "Hi Doc, I get phlegm attacks when I sing. Is it because of wrong technique?" It's unlikely that phlegm would come about from wrong technique. However, it could be. So let me tell you firstly what it more often is a signal of. More often, it's a signal of one of 3 things. It could be a signal of dehydration. And so that sense of phlegmy, gluggy, claggy kind of feeling can be by virtue of that your body, your systemic hydration is not very high. It's not high, like you just don't have enough water in your body. And so your mucosal lining, the mucosa that you know, if they ever take a swab from within your cheek, we got a lot of that done during COVID, remember? And what they're doing is scratching the mucosa, and it takes some cells with it, but it's also like a jelly kind of lining. And if your body doesn't have enough hydration, that can thicken a little bit, and so that can leave you with a phlegmy kind of feel. The second most the cause is reflux. And so reflux can stimulate your protective response. So your esophagus, if I'm remembering the statistics correctly, your esophagus is 40 times more resilient to that which is sitting above the esophagus, up into the larynx, the laryngopharynx, and up into the pharynx. Our esophagus is built to withstand the natural regurgitation of acid, but anything above the esophagus really is less able to withstand that. But one way that your body will try and cope with that is to excrete some protective, gunk. And that can leave us with a phlegmy kind of feeling. So reflux can be another one. And so responding to that with, firstly, lifestyle and diet change, but if necessary, some over-the-counter Gaviscon. You can get at any grocery store mostly, or if your doctor suggests it, some prescription medication. So that's how you can deal with that. The third one is allergy, and so allergy more often than not forms a response within the nasal passage. We get inflammation and secretion through the nasal passage down the back of the soft palate, and it's pretty gunky, and it'll just sort of drip, and that's why we call it post-nasal drip. Post, behind, nasal, drip. And so that can fill you and give you that sense of glugginess. So they're generally the three main causes that I would go to with someone sitting right in front of me, Mohammed, and talk to them about it. You ask, is that going to be because of wrong technique? And the reason I said it could be is because it's interesting. Back in 2009 in Paris, I was at a conference for voice, and I watched a presentation for distorted vocal, and this was not a presentation suggesting there was anything wrong with distorted vocal, but it was showing the larynx, the vocal folds, during distorted vocal behavior, and this was actually someone being scoped live on screen in front of us. And it was really interesting because the level of shearing force and adduction was causing a higher level of secretion through the now I go to say it, I can't think of the word. There is a between the false fold and the true fold, there's a line. My brain's gone blank when I need it. Anyway, that's where we secrete lubrication across the surface of the vocal folds. And there was an increased secretion when the voice was under that heightened activity of disturbed vocal. Really interesting. It was a fascinating thing to watch. I wonder, and I can only wonder, whether during times of poor technique where there is, and where this was not the part of the presentation we were watching someone do distorted vocal very well, good technique, sustainable, healthy. But I wonder whether we would observe the same thing with a voice that is behaving in a poor way technically, where there is too much load, there's too much subglottal pressure, too much supraglottic constriction, all of the nasty things that we try to balance out with good technique. I wonder whether we would see a similar responsive secretion to that, which then could lead to a feeling of phlegminess. And I put that out more there as a hypothesis, Mohammed, than fact, because I think we would need to do far more research into that suggestion than me just, off the top of my head going, that sounds like a good idea. I'm just adding a few things together academically and going, maybe. But can I encourage you to look at the first three: hydration, reflux, allergy. They're the three I'd normally go to. Linda is going to ask a question. Linda, have you asked? Oh, yes, you have. You have asked the question where I want you to ask the question. let me come here. Let me go to here. How are we going? How are we going with the? We've still only had 10 votes. Come on, people! More votes! More votes! For the poll. Here's a question from me, Dr. Dan. What are the differences between high belt and energized high head voice? That's a good question, Linda. I honestly think the difference look, it could well be a fine line and quite a subjective line. For me, a high belt, and I tend to try and reserve the use of the word belt for higher level vocal that has an intensity and a high energy to it. But you're going to hear typically quite a body in the tone. The tone won't be thin. And I need to grab some water. I typically don't think of belt as being thin, whereas an energized high head voice, for example, I would think could be thin. I think what we can recognize is that our language, to a certain extent, is limited, isn't it, in what we can and can't describe. For example, I would also differentiate. Sorry, everyone, I just need to have some more water here. I've also given to differentiating, for example, between rock belt and like a music theatre belt. And so the differentiation, again, is probably a fine line, but I would hear a higher level of constriction in the rock belt than I would expect to hear in what would be a cleaner tone in the musical theatre belt, just as an example. And ultimately, perhaps we're talking here about loud, high singing as being on a spectrum, and you're going from very thin, which we may be reticent to call belt, to very thick, which could find itself over in that sort of rock belt feel. It's our ability to label things is very important and very necessary. But you know one thing, in fact, when I first started doing videos for YouTube, I wasn't fresh out of college. I was fresh out of completing my doctorate, so I'd done my fair share of university by that stage. But university had really given me very select language around certain topics. And the longer I have spent in a wider community of singers here on YouTube, for the most part, the more I'm very ready and willing to engage in a wider scope of terminology that's all talking about the same thing. It's just that in certain communities it's called chest voice, in other communities it's called mode 1, and in one sense I'm learning to be multilingual, being able to know that when someone says chest voice, in my mind, I might think to myself, yes, that's thyroarytenoid, mode 1. But it's okay to call it chest voice. Okay. You're not wrong. Could I break it down and decide that there are limitations and reasons why I don't personally tend to use the term chest voice? Yeah, I could. But, do I need to waste our time with that? Well, I've got pre-recorded videos that waste our time on that, and you can go and check those out if you like. But the point being is that, as long as you're able to communicate clearly with others and with yourself what you are in search of, I think that's fine. And Linda, I know you well enough to know I think you would probably agree with everything I just said. If not, leave me a message below. Martian Murray, I love your handle, Martian Murray. My upper throat gets sore, tired pretty quick, but bad technique or just new to singing? If you are just new to singing, it well could be both. Yeah, it well could be a fitness issue and the fact that you are still learning to iron out your technique. And so the better your technique becomes, the less fatigue you are going to experience when it comes to your singing. And so it's just going to be, you're going to end up setting up a really positive loop for your voice. It's interesting. Good technique sets up a positive loop. A lack of technique or bad technique will set up a negative loop. And so we want to, make sure the voice is always reinforcing positivity as opposed to negativity. And so Martian Murray, I think you want to make sure that you're developing a technique, and that's going to really improve things for you. Can I also make mention, though, that if it is getting sore, you use the word sore, I want you to make sure you are building in times of vocal rest. I said it again on Friday to a student. The most underestimated thing that not enough of us do with the voice after heightened use is rest it. So many issues could be basically avoided, and I'm talking wear and tear, damage. So many of these things could be avoided if the singer simply took the time to allow the voice to repair, to recover. I was making the point with the student on Friday that, if someone had a sprained ankle, they played 1 week. Well, let's say they sprain their ankle in at practice during midweek. Then it's likely that it's not going to be wise to run onto the field and play a game with a sprained ankle. What's likely to happen in that instance? It's likely for the inflammation to flare up, and with that heightened inflammation, you can do further and more significant damage to what is at the level of it just simply being strained muscle. You just need to let it settle down. Yes, do you need to move it? Yes, you do, and a good physio would lead you through that. But you certainly wouldn't place it under game stress until it has settled down, until you've rested it. It's the same with your voice. So often people just sing on, and actually that sore voice, that voice that is expressing to you, hey, I'm a little bit, just take some time out. Yeah? Take 3 or 4 days off. Let the voice settle down and then go again. And so Martian, I'll allow you to interpret that for your own specific circumstance, but just be careful. Whenever a singer says to me, my voice is sore, that word always is a red flag for me. Always a red flag. How are we going for? That's interesting. 17 votes for the poll. 17 votes for the poll, and the clear leader is no longer the clear leader. I will tell you, however, the clear loser is still very much the clear loser. I'm going to tell you the results of the poll in a moment. Let's come to our next question. SFXS, what to do, what can you and what not to do when you are sick as a singer? Well, it's interesting. I think in part I just answered that. Hey, that I think there is two levels of answer to this. If you are an avocational singer, that is, you do not work for money, and in that group I do include church singers. If you are a person who is not being paid to step onto stage, my advice to you is vocal rest. If you are sick, the heightened level of risk and danger to your voice is significant when you are sick. And so it is better, dare I say best, for you to stay off stage and not use your voice. One of those reasons is that when we are sick, and I'm talking, acute sickness here, the cold, the flu, COVID, there is almost certainly going to be inflammation of the vocal folds, and by virtue of placing the voice under performance load, you are risking, and this is not an insignificant risk, it is a significant risk of vocal fold hemorrhage in that situation. Unlike other vocal conditions like nodules and polyps, these all happen over time, and it takes time generally to create nodules. Just as one example, a vocal fold hemorrhage happens in an instant, and there doesn't have to been any prior issues with the voice. If a singer sings when they're sick, the risk of vocal fold hemorrhage is a present danger. First thing. So avocational singers, amateur vocalists, just don't. It's not worth it. Trust me, it is not worth it. I have had far too many singers in this studio where I am handing them tissues because they are bawling, because they are literally looking back on that one gig where they're just going, and I'm actually thinking of church singers here specifically, if they had have chosen not to sing on that morning. Seriously. And here we are, we're rehabilitating a voice, and that's going to take between 3 to 6 months for the voice to be fully operational again. That's not to say we don't sing for 3 to 6 months, but you just don't do it to yourself. That's the first thing. Second, if you are a working singer, it's a bit more complicated, and I acknowledge that it is. I've been in that situation myself. There are ways that you can manage yourself around it, and it really is driven by your context. If, for example, you're in a duo, you might get the duo partner to carry more songs than they normally would. If your musicianship skills are good enough, you might choose to lower keys so that you're not being extreme. You might choose to completely rework your set list so that it's cruisy and not having you sing at the top of your range, for half the set. There's a whole range of things that you can do. I know that cancelling a gig is going to be, it probably shouldn't be, but I understand that it's going to be the last resort. And so, finding someone to dep for you, that is to fill in, for those of you not familiar with that language, certainly is something you could do. I can count on one hand the amount of gigs that I have had to cancel in my professional career. Each one of those, I had no voice. There was nothing. So, you know, I couldn't have gone on if I'd wanted to. But you have to work through that yourself. The risk is still in play for you as a professional singer. You're not suddenly special because you're being handed dollars. Anatomically, it's all the same. Your biology is still at risk. And so you have to manage that risk, mitigate the risk to the best of that you can, and go forward as best as you can, and hoping that you're able to do that in such a way that doesn't leave your voice compromised in any way, shape or form. And then follow that up with immediate vocal rest. Like, you know, just go into wrapping your voice up in cotton wool after that gig. Give it a lot of downtime. Again, vocal rest being a real key. I hope that's helpful. Lennon, actually, we've got 20 votes. And the loser is still very much the loser. Not as much a loser as before. I'm going to come back to, after this question, I'm going to come back to our votes. I'm hoping to get to 21. You know, I grew up saying 21 is not a number, it's a legend. That doesn't mean anything. Regarding hoarseness, I'm a baritone. When I sing bass in choir rehearsals and performances, I become hoarse. I'm using fine. I think that should say I'm usually fine when I sing tenor. What are your thoughts on mitigating this? I think the answer is found in your question, and that is don't sing bass. I know we like to be all things to all men and women, don't we? But we can't be. The very fact that you tell me that you're fine when you sing tenor, even as a baritone, tells me you are a high baritone, what some might call a baritenor. And so your anatomy, and I dare say perhaps where your prima voce is, your prime voice sits higher. And so it well could be that when you're trying to get down to those bass notes, you might be imposing on the larynx to get down into those moments. And so my suggestion to you is that bass is not the part for you. Lennon, you may or may not like to hear that. Often when I'm telling singers, you know, that choral part is not your part, for some reason we do, and Lennon, I'm not making this suggestion of yourself because we don't know each other personally, but when we become connected to certain parts, like a part singing almost has an identity attachment to it, doesn't it? Like, you know, I've always sung tenor, and I've got no desire to sing. I couldn't get down to bass if I tried, but that's part of my identity, and I get that for some people they've found themselves in certain parts, it becomes a part of their identity, and you go, actually, I don't think you're best there. You should be somewhere else. That can be a real struggle to reform that around your identity. We're going to talk more about that next week, aren't we? With Claudia. So, Lennon, I would be looking to move your part if you can. Can I suggest to you, Lennon, that there not being enough basses in the choir is not sufficient enough reason for you to be singing in that part? You are placing your voice under heightened load by requiring it to constantly sing in a space that it's not physiologically given to doing well. So I hope that's some good feedback. We haven't quite got to 20 votes, so I am going to answer one more question, then we're going to finish with the poll results. And the last question comes to Victoria. Great questions today, everyone. Really good variety of questions. I've been kicked out of the choir I joined. Victoria, why? I know I'm not tone deaf. I think you might mean tone deaf. But the choir director said I don't hit the right notes. How do I improve that? You find a different choir, Victoria. Can I, without telling you who, what, where, or when, I am literally walking alongside one of my private students through this exact same issue right now. I kid you not. And the style of choir that my student has found themselves in is not the type of choir that I think both of us thought she was signing up to in the new year. And there are in our communities different types of choirs. There are your audition-based, product-driven, and I'm not let's not place any qualitative judgment on any or which, right? They all have their place. So there are the choirs that are very product-driven. That is, they are rehearsing to perform in a variety of different contexts. And the choir is often paid to perform in those contexts. And so the level of singing needs to be at a quality in keeping with the fact that you, the individual, might not be being paid, but the choir is. And so the expectations around that at times are higher. They just are. That's the sort of choir my student found herself in. The interesting thing about this is my student does not struggle for pitch. It's not a pitch issue. It's more a learning to sight read and be able to follow the parts accurately at a speed that the choir is requiring. Add to that, there's some cultural issues within the choir that I have some concerns around, and again, we've talked through that with my student. As I said, that's not the sort of choir I thought my student was signing up for. I thought the sort of choir that my student was signing up for was a completely different type of choir, and that is what I'm choosing to call today, a very process-driven choir. And it's a choir that typically is not auditioned. It is a collection of people who are coming together because they love to sing in group, singing harmonies. That doesn't mean they're any less desiring of wanting to do it well, but the focus is not on the product, even though product might be produced. They might have performances that they're fronting up for, but it's very much a community choir as opposed to a professional choir. Professional choirs being product focused, community choirs being process focused. And so it's important for you to identify which one. Now, it would be surprising for me to learn that your community processed non-auditioned choir is going to call into question and therefore ask you to leave because you're struggling to sing in tune. Because the whole point of singing in these types of choirs is to enjoy the process of learning to do these things. We have a great choir here in Brisbane, and we've actually had the choral director of what they're called cheap trills. And the whole idea of it is that you are coming along to participate in a communal activity of singing. We also have another thing here in Australia called pub choir, and it is exactly what you think. It all started with a lady here in Australia who has people in pubs singing. She teaches them the parts and whatever. No one's being kicked out of that scenario. Firstly, no one was auditioned. Well, the audition was buy a beer. All of the things we teach singers not to do, drink alcohol while you sing. But that's not the point of these choirs, is it? You know, and so my encouragement to you, Victoria, is what my encouragement has been to my student. Find the right choir. Find the right fit. It's not you, it's them. It's not them, it's you. And in that, I'm trying to communicate to you, they're not doing anything wrong. They just might be the wrong fit for you. You're not doing anything wrong. They just might not be the right fit for you. Yeah? Find the right fit, and I think you'll find it far more encouraging, far more nurturing, and far more enjoyable, you know. And that's what I'm reminding my private student about. This, we've got to come back to why was she joining the choir in the first place? It's because she wants to love the process of singing. And so I want that. I want that. I've just seen your comment here, Victoria. Where is it? Here. Yes, you've answered saying, thank you, Dr. Dan. Yes, the choir performed and got paid, but exactly like you said, that's the type of choir I wanted to join. Well, that's interesting. Why don't you step it up? Why don't you find yourself a choir where you can really refine some of those, you know, more heightened skills, and then, you know, go back, audition for that type of choir you want to join. Or maybe I'm misinterpreting, maybe you wanted to join the process-driven choir. Anyway, I hope all of that was helpful, and I'm hoping you got something out of that. We got to 21 votes. Woohoo! Let's have a look at the results. I wonder what you voted for. Let's have a look at the votes. The votes are as such. Which part of singing feels most magical to you? Hitting high notes effortlessly early on, that was the clear winner. It's still a clear winner at 42%. Blending perfectly in harmony, 33%. Singing with deep emotion, 19%. And nailing a tricky vocal run, 4%. Very quickly, type into the chat, which one do you think I would have ticked if YouTube would allow me to? I can't. Quick. I'm going to wait here very quickly. Neeby's put her hands up. It's the nailing a tricky. You're all by yourself, Neeby. All by yourself. Laura said singing with deep emotion. Linda has said harmonizing. Brittany, harmony. Marsh and Murray, deep. Victoria, guess what, folks? Linda knows me very well. You love harmonizing, Dr. Dan. I do. It's, you know, there for me, it would have been the harmonizing answer, because there is something to be said for singing with another human being and having your voices blend. There's just, and what can be really exciting and scary at the same time is where you lose your own voice in that blend. That's pretty magical. I hope you've enjoyed today's live hangout. That was good. Great questions, everyone. Great questions. Hey, take a moment to become a member of the channel if you could. I would appreciate you joining up and supporting the channel in that way. Next week, again, we're going to get together with Claudia. I think it's going to be a really important show. So if you're feeling comfortable to, make sure you tune in. The way you can do that, of course, is subscribe, hit the white bell icon, get the reminders, It all happens that way, as we know. I very much look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you all have a great week. I'll see you again soon. Until then, sing well.